Dovydas, a young man from Lithuania, has a very unique job. He works as a sign language interpreter and takes part in every kind of art project. During his introduction, he translates a live music performance, and his hand movements strongly resemble a dance. Another main character of the story, Elena, on the other hand, dances not only with her hands and arms. She is a professional dancer, swirling around her empty studio before it gets filled with large groups of people, trying to learn how to express their emotions through movements and gestures. When these two people meet each other for the first time, Elena is stretching on the floor of her studio. Dovydas comes in, saying politely that he is the sign language interpreter she hired to help with a group of deaf people. It is extremely quiet in the studio as the young man takes off his shoes, introducing himself. Dovydas is the first one to break this silence, but after learning each other's names, the duo immediately runs out of things to say. For just a moment, slightly uncomfortable silence falls as both try to seek a subject to follow. But fortunately, the group comes in very soon. It is obvious right off the bat that the girl is anxious. This must be the first time she has worked with the deaf community. As a tense smile stretches over her face, she introduces herself and the program they are going to go through. As it turns out, after several meetings of this kind, they will go to the sea together with many other groups and show what they have prepared. The initial lesson goes well. As the group practices silently in unison, Dovydas just stands by, his hands wiggling from his shoulders, and smiles at the scene. When it is all done, both he and the participants give compliments to the teacher and leave her alone in the studio. Coming outside, Dovydas is clearly reluctant about something. Moving back and forth, he is in the process of making some decisions or fighting within himself to overcome some inner clash of thoughts. Finally, when Elena comes out, we learn what the inner trial was about. Spreading his shoulders, the young man offers her a straightforward offer to go somewhere together. Elena likes this abrupt shift of events. As a smile stretches over her face, she asks where, and agrees anyway. When Dovydas answers that he has no idea, it doesn't matter if they spend some more time together. Nothing special happens during their walk together. Dovydas eats a sandwich as the two go on and on about ordinary, sometimes even silly stuff. The subject of their conversation isn't as important as the degree of comfort they feel in each other's presence. Later that day, Elena goes to a massage therapy session. Even the massagist notices her uplifted mood. The next morning, she shares the reason for this mood with her friends in her studio. The two are quite skeptical of the possible relationship, since they know about their friend's tendency to get bored by another person very quickly. Elena, on the other hand, points out that this time she has a different kind of emotion. The connection she felt with Dovydas was on another level. Somehow, it all seems as if they've known each other for a very long time. Still, she low-key agrees with the skepticism. For some reason, she thinks it will not work out. After next week's lesson, the duo are alone again. From time to time, they find a subject of quirky and witty conversation. But when silence falls, they just find each other's eyes and chuckle for no obvious reason. The duo went for a walk that day too. This time they discuss the cross tattoo on Elena's ankle, and this brings them to a very important and sudden revelation. Talking about the meaning of spirituality, Dovydas admits that he has been going to church a lot lately. This alone takes Elena aback, but the reason he states it surprises her even more. As it turns out, Dovydas is attending mandatory preparation classes for a marriage ritual. It all sounds as if he's about to get married soon, so the expressions on Elena's face change abruptly, and Dovydas notices it very quickly. He laughs when he realizes how it all must have come out. The classes aren't for his marriage, he explains. He is only interpreting for it. Elena offers to let her go to her place after the walk. He must be hungry, and she made a ridiculous amount of soup. It is when the two grab their spoons that suddenly Dovydas drops a huge fact about his life. His brother is deaf, and this is what led him to his profession. The marriage classes are for his brother as well. All of this sounds quite heroic, but Elena jokingly interprets it differently. All this information tells her that Dovydas was just too lazy to learn some other skill in life. After the meal, she leads him into her messy room and jumps on her bed. At first, Dovydas just stands by until he begins walking around the room, looking for something to talk about. As he treads slowly, the calmness on his face starts to feel a bit forced, and the air in the room begins to become tense. Elena expects to see him in his bed soon, but as if there were some kind of repulsive force behind it, the man stays away from it. It is not long after that Elena learns about the reason behind it. As Dovydas reveals, he is asexual. He isn't. And he has never been sexually attracted to anyone. Elena is a little confused at first. She even thinks that the problem might be in her, but Dovydas assures her that he likes her. This is exactly why he is revealing this intimate detail to her at this moment. Elena is clearly disappointed. She doesn't know what to say. Abruptly, the connection is gone, and the meeting ends in a quite uncomfortable tone. That night, Elena goes to meet one of her guy friends, named Vilius, at his house. The nature of her visit is obvious right off the bat. The two have a one-sided, strictly sexual relationship with shallower intimacy, but a lot of heat. Elena must be dispelling the disappointment she went through with Dovydas recently. After another week passes, the time to go to the sea comes. The bus ride is quite uncomfortable, as Elena and Dovydas don't even say hello to each other. The performance her team puts forward, however, is quite extraordinary. Dovydas compliments her without words from a distance. They grab a beer afterward, and since the initial surprise effect is already gone, they discuss their situation better. From the conversation, it gradually becomes more and more evident that the two want to be in a relationship. Dovydas wants no intimacy, but a firm bond, while Elena wants all intimacy and no strong relationship. It is hard to imagine them finding a way to be together. Even though she tried to conduct online research on the matter, Elena still found herself confused about this subject. Sitting together as friends, Dovydas first takes a step towards intimacy in this moment. He asks if he could hold her hand, and as his request is accepted, he takes it gently. As weird as it might seem from the outside, this moment is very important for both. Getting back to the city, Elena plans to quickly drop by her mother's house to get something, when suddenly, Dovydas expresses his will to meet her parents. Naturally, Elena immediately denies introducing him, especially since the mother is extremely strict and cold. But in the next scene, we see the three sitting around a small table in silence. The emotionless, erect figure of the mother is watching her daughter in disapproval and resentment as Dovydas sits about like a neighbor's kid. It is a terrible experience for both Dovydas and Elena. It is tempted to make at least a slightly pleasing conversation, but the mother cuts every road towards it. She is truly a disgraceful person. The duo will have to experience something satisfying and comfortable as soon as possible. The young man sees how gloomy Elena is after the visit. Wrapping his arm around her shoulder, he expresses how much he likes her and puts a smile on her face. Elena is not sure at first. She wants him to state a reason why he likes her. She wants some proof, but Dovydas doesn't explain the unexplainable with words. He simply leans towards her and gives her a warm kiss. And so, their relationship officially begins. But this doesn't mean that the circumstances are going to change. Elena gets invited to Dovydas' brother's wedding then. They are lying down together alone in the next scene. Brushing his hand across her cheeks and diving into her eyes, Dovydas feels a special kind of connection, and Elena feels the same. In this manner, they express love, and that is enough. They are surely falling in love. After the wedding, Elena visits her friend, Victoria, in a monastery and shows her a tattoo for the first time. She made it to compliment her going to the monastery when both were very young, but decided not to show because it seemed so silly. The visit is extremely refreshing. Coming back to the city, Elena meets with foreign dancers and spends the entire day and night together with them. Forming a connection with a dancer named Dan, she finds herself in his room in the next scene. They are here just to fetch some drinks for the company, but Dan seems extremely eager to get in bed. As we soon learn, he has a girlfriend, but the reason he wants to get under the bed is clearly not sleeping. Elena is drunk. Laughing, she sits on the side of the bed once invited, but when Dan leans forward for a kiss, she doesn't let him do it. In the next scene, she is telling all this to Dovydas. She didn't do it with Dan because she wasn't sure what his reaction would be. What she wants to do now is discuss this matter and agree on how their sexual life is going to be. Dovydas asks Elena what she would like to hear from him, and when Elena expresses her desire, he agrees. Elena wants everything to be normal, the two of them and nobody else. She wants him to try being intimate with her. The word normal puts a smile on Dovydas' face, and the invitation makes him a tiny bit reluctant, but considering her feelings and actions, he agrees. The next morning, however, it is extremely apparent that it is not going to be that easy. Even though Dovydas says that he wants it, and even though he participates in the act willingly, it is obvious to Elena that he doesn't want it. Sensing no trace of passion in her partner, she turns off too. Elena dances particularly energetically that day. Clearly, she has a lot to express. Dovydas notices that thoughts are raging in her mind too. He even thinks he must address it, but he doesn't know how. After kissing and dropping silly jokes in bed later that day, Elena doesn't seem so tense anymore. This is one of the rare moments where everything fits, and it all works seamlessly, without any effort. Elena dances her mind away that day in the studio, and later that night, she encounters a very unusual situation. She and Dovydas are lying together, preparing to go to sleep, when someone bangs on her door aggressively. Confused, Elena looks around, and Dovydas asks if he should be the one to answer the door, but it turns out to be no one dangerous. The guy who Elena visited before she got together with Dovydas is standing in the doorway. As a reminder, his name is Vilius. His mind is completely sunk in alcohol, and he thinks that he loves Elena and wants to be with her forever. He seems to have come here with a bike, but Dovydas still advises him to go. Elena simply replies that he's drunk. She doesn't even think about letting Vilius in, but once she closes the door in his face, Dovydas reflects on what they are doing. Letting this intoxicated man ride a bike in the middle of the night would mean taking responsibility for a possible fatal accident. So, the couple opens the door and lets the man crush on Elena's couch for the night. That night, both fail to sleep, as Vilius snorts out all the silence and peace in the room. As they lay facing one another, a strange sense of heat came over Dovydas. Kissing her gently, he takes off her shorts and gets on top of her. The rustling of their blankets merges into the sound of snorting, and Elena fails to relax. Looking over at the sleeping man on the couch, she feels no gravitation towards this moment. It is unusual for her that Dovydas somehow is turned on at this exact moment. It is in a few seconds that she stops him and turns over. No more words were spoken that night. When the morning comes and the couple wakes up, the couch is already empty and tidy. The last night's events have clearly created some degree of conflict between Elena and Dovydas, and the man thinks it is better to address it immediately. After a calm and reserved conversation in which both parties manage to express their points of view, the matter is solved. First, Dovydas asks when she last saw Vilius. Clearly, he is suspicious that Elena needed intimate contact and sought it out with him after she could not find it with Dovydas. As it turns out, this unhelpful, bitter thought is what intoxicated him last night. His actions were derived directly from it too. In Elena's mind, however, something completely different was happening that day when she fought that man. Mistakenly, she felt rejected by Dovydas and went to someone else to fill up her need for approval. Still, she did nothing wrong. They weren't together then. The conversation ends with a long, accepting stare until the two brush their lips against each other gently. Later that day, Elena has a performance, and naturally, Dovydas is invited. Before going to the event space, he buys a pretty bouquet of flowers, but turning back to leave, he suddenly realizes that he doesn't need them at all. He returns the flowers then, and goes to attend the performance without them. The dance is mesmerizing. During the after-party, Dovydas meets Dan and notices the familiarity he shows towards everyone, including Elena. A thought then appears in his mind. His girlfriend must be missing her old lifestyle. That night, she asks her a question about it, and learns that it is, in fact, true. To Elena, it was beautiful to catch a glimpse of passion in someone else's eyes and to see clearly that they wanted her in that moment. It is only a little weird to talk about it. The next morning, the couple is in total silence. Participating in an unplanned dance, they do their chores like nobody else and embrace each other afterward. Elena wants him so much at this moment. She even initiates the deed, but Dovydas holds her arms firmly and places them on his shoulders instead. He doesn't want to apologize for himself anymore. He accepts himself as he is, and he wants Elena to do the same too. Nobody can say that Elena doesn't accept Dovydas or that she disapproves of him because of his sexuality, but the truth is that she slowly becomes more tense. The rejected initiations cause a lot of pain in her body, and to cure that pain, she decides to quiet her passionate side. She must become cold and learn to control her feelings and bodily sensations better if she wants to be happy in this relationship. It is not going to be easy though. She needs advice, and the person she thinks is best qualified to answer her question is, of course, Victoria, her childhood friend who became a nun when she finished school. After visiting her, she receives wonderful insight. At first, Victoria emphasizes that she scarcely even thinks about men. Having no contact with the opposite sex was tough at first, but now the biggest struggle she has is getting up early. In truth, Elena doesn't get any direct advice from her. It is just a sentence that has a very interesting implication behind it. As Victoria points out, she doesn't feel lonely anymore. This is why she craves nothing. That night, the couple goes to a bar and drinks a little too much. This is especially true in Dovydas' case. During the party, he notices Elena chatting with other guys and reflects on how their relationship is structured. A question appears in his mind, and bitter thoughts line up one after another. It is not fair that he must shackle her up. Intoxicated with alcohol, he tells her that she can sleep with other men if she wants. He doesn't care about the system anymore. Another truth, however, is that he is extremely drunk, and even though Elena is surprised, she thinks that alcohol must have something to do with Dovydas' line of thinking. Both are hungover the next morning, and both feel as if something is wrong with them. At one point, Elena looks inside the bathroom and notices something that doesn't fit her understanding of asexualism. Dovydas is and as Elena understands it, he must be thinking about someone in the process. Unable to understand how that is asexualism, she remembers Dovidas's last night's idea to change the rails of their relationship and becomes extremely mad at him. Once the man comes out of the shower, he is confronted with harsh questions. Struggling to answer them, he tries to justify himself by pointing out that whatever he is doing isn't directed at another person. It's just a physiological thing, and it has nothing to do with his sexuality. But his explanation isn't enough for Elena. She feels manipulated and lied to, and she wants Dovidas to express what he feels too. As it turns out, Dovidas feels like a participant in a feudal relationship. Waiting for a moment when Elena leaves him, he has been constantly aware of the fact that he will never be enough for her. He can never be the person she needs, and therefore, he feels that it is better for them to break up. That evening, Elena meets with Vilius and tells him to go to his place. It is clear what she wants from him, but the man shows a surprising sense of rationality in this moment. Knowing that Elena has a boyfriend, he asks her why she is so eager to be with him suddenly. She has a cool boyfriend and there is no reason for her to ruin everything with him. In the end, nothing happens between them. They just have a drink together and call it a day. Afterward, Elena calls Dovidas and tells him where she has been. She doesn't lie about Vilius either. At first though, she acts exactly as they agreed, but Dovidas is still visibly angry in the next scene. Elena says that she doesn't understand what she did wrong, and Dovidas doesn't go out of his way to explain it to her either. Without saying much, he puts on his shoes and leaves the apartment. He is sitting on a bench alone when Elena finally catches up to him. She wants all this arguing to stop. Sitting down calmly, she softens her voice and tells him to go. But Dovidas isn't even looking at her. He doesn't want to go anywhere. The main issue isn't addressed here, and it stays afloat till the next morning when Dovidas gets into a train. He's about to travel all the way to the sea, and he isn't even saying goodbye to Elena, who's just standing nearby. Even though Dovidas isn't even looking at her, she feels that she must be around him at this moment, and so having no idea how this crisis can be solved, she gets on the train as well. Trying to keep up with him in the woods, she hurts her leg in the next scene and sees the man coming towards him. Now he wants to approach and talk, and this enrages Elena. Feeling a tide of fury coming onto her, she lets it all out on Dovidas. He's been ignoring her all this time, even though she has been tailing him around for all these hours like a clueless kid, and now he wants to talk. If he wants to break up, then he should just say so. But even then, it will mean that everything happened for nothing. Their connection was false and meaningless, even though it felt like a gift from heaven. The couple gets a room together then. Both are silent as they reflect on their feelings, but suddenly they begin laughing. They've come all the way to the seaside, and the reason for that isn't obvious. Relieving tension through laughter, Dovidas says that he will never stop caring for her. This simple but most meaningful thing is what they both agree upon. And this feeling they both feel is so real that tears begin flowing from their eyes. Coming back to the city, both return to their lives then, knowing that something unquestionable and magical will always live in their hearts.